All right.
feel like I'm in ESPN studios here.
Yeah. All right. So we got a lot of different things going on here. We got Facebook and Instagram and then Zoom.
Let's see if we can get a good.
Right there.
Yeah, let me just get my camera in a good spot. There we go.
Perfect.
All right.
All right. So welcome.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Kirk, and thanks for everyone who's out there watching. If you want, just to kind of get ahead of time, you're more than welcome to ask questions. The idea from this is just a conversation between Kirk and me, but I want you guys to get involved and ask some questions, and we'll see what we can do. So Kirk, just give me a little bit of tell everyone who you are. I mean, I know who you are. We've been communicating for a while.
Yeah.
But tell me who you are and what you and a little bit of background about yourself.
Okay. So right now I work as head of fitness at Ben Shear Golf in Scotch Plains, New Jersey. So Ben has a facility there. He's had the facility there for about 20 years. And so I've been working there since September of last year. I kind of got started working in the world of golf fitness when I was, so I'm originally from Pennsylvania, went to Penn State University, graduated there, and then started working for the university as a strength and conditioning coach. And I worked with both men's and the women's golf team there for about 13 years. After that, I moved to the city. I was working at Golf and Body NYC, worked as the director of fitness there for almost 6 years. And then had a short stop at an Equinox in the city, and then joined Ben back in the fall, like I said.
Okay. Terrific. So
yeah,
pretty extensive experience. Yeah. We've connected a few years ago, and for me, it was, I always like to have a team around myself, whether it's, different people in different areas of the game. I know a little bit about fitness, just enough to kind of be dangerous, but I like to have people like yourself and Ben as my experts. So yeah. And let's kind of jump right into this. One of the questions that I always get, and I had a question last night that I didn't get the answer from Michael Scott, if he's on here tonight, is everyone thinks fitness, they think about speed and power, right? That's kind of the game now. It's can we hit it far? Can we get it out there? I actually think of fitness more in likes of consistency. I think being fit helps you, play, as well on the 18th hole as you do on the first hole. So, and I know this is a difficult question. I think, when talking about fitness, you have to deal with the actual individual. So, let's go in with the understanding that, what's kind of good for everybody here, but what are some things that you like to do to help improve people's fitness? And if you want, you can also kind of start, or maybe let's start, what are some things that typically take away from a player's power, right? Or the ability to generate speed, and then let's go into some exercises that people can do to improve their power and their speed.
Okay. Yeah, like you said, kind of a broad ranging question. We could probably spend the entire night just talking about this, but I'll try to boil it down as succinctly as possible. I'll start kind of big picture, like you sort of said. I mean, I think you have to look at the individual, and whether you're a junior, whether you're an adult, or whether you're a senior, what is taking away from your speed is probably going to be a little bit different. I think on the junior end of things, oftentimes it's more of a strength and stability issue. Most juniors move pretty well, but maybe they don't have the strength or the stability that they could eventually grow into. A lot of times with our adults, it's a lot more of they've been focusing a lot on career and family, and maybe haven't spent as much time in the gym. They haven't done a lot of things. We don't, as we get older, we just don't do things that move. We try to move quickly. So power is one of the things that is lost first and most quickly as we age. And then, most adults, we start to lose our ability to move, and mobility, flexibility kind of decreases. So those are some of the things that kind of take away from our ability to generate maximal club head speed. When we look at how do we help somebody get better club head speed, again, you have to sort of look at the individual and say, okay, what may be holding them back? It could be a mobility issue. They might not be able to move well enough to generate enough club head speed. They may not have enough strength. And I think it's important to understand that strength and speed and power are sort of two different things. And I'll usually use the idea of a power lifter or a bodybuilder versus an Olympic weightlifter, where a power lifter, they're trying to lift the heaviest weight they can. Speed is not important. An Olympic lifter, they're trying to lift some heavy weights, but there's more of an element of speed involved. So speed and strength and speed are two different things. We need to address them differently. And then you talked a little bit about like the endurance component, where, we probably all know the guy that, can bomb it on the first tee, but coming down the last 4 or 5 holes, they might be dragging and can't generate that same club head speed. So there is an element of endurance that's important there too. One of the things that we try to do at Ben's place is try to figure out what is that limiting factor. And we've got some simple tools that we can use to figure that out. We've got some very fancy tools like a 1080 motion, where we can really break down how much power somebody is generating, but then also figure out, are they getting that more from the speed component? Or are they getting that more from the strength component? So that's the big picture. Now, I think what probably most people are thinking of is, if all those things are in place, what are the actual speed exercises that we can do? And I think there's a lot of products out there like Super Speed Golf and different training aids that focus on creating more club head speed. And those are all great. Even if you don't have, a product like that, you can still just use your own golf clubs. And I think one of the things that, we try to get our players to do, and a lot of players don't do, is, we don't often swing at 100% effort. Okay. There's always some amount of, I think that we're sort of holding back in the effort to, keep some consistency. Like you said, hit the ball in a certain direction. If you think of, what we see on tour when guys play on the weekend versus what we see in a long drive competition. Okay. There's an element of accuracy that is needed, and that keeps most people from swinging at 100%. So just simply taking your own golf clubs and going out and trying to hit the ball as far as possible, or not even hitting a ball, just swinging the club as hard as you can, and not really worrying about where it goes. That in and of itself can work on some club head speed. And then if we think about the things that we can do in the gym, there's some pretty high level things that we can do. So if someone has some experience in the gym, things like Olympic lifts and kettlebell ballistics and different things like that, those are all great. What most people it's going to come down to, and what we do with probably the majority of our players, especially our adults, and even a lot of our juniors when they're first starting out, is, a lot of lower body plyometric drills, basically jumping drills in different directions. So if we think about, we use something like a swing catalyst to figure out what kind of forces we're using in the ground. So we're doing the same thing where, we're trying to use exercises that focus on vertical force production, horizontal force production, and rotational force production. So different kind of jumping exercises. Med ball drills, med ball throws are great for that, that type of speed development as well. The key there, and with the jumps as well, the key is always the intent. We always try to coach our clients and our juniors, throw the ball with as much speed and intention as possible. If you're throwing it off a wall, try to break the wall, or try to break the ball as you throw it against the wall. The intent is kind of the important part there. And then one I think that gets overlooked a lot too is sprints, short sprints. That's a great lower body speed exercise. And I think especially now when, we're at home and we're very limited in the equipment we have and what we can do, doing some sprints, and I'm talking short sprints where, we're probably talking that something 5 to 10 seconds long. If you think about on track, you're probably not doing more than probably 100 meters, because again, you need to keep that speed high, and not bring in that fatigue component to continue to work on speed. So, like I said, we could probably talk about this for an hour, but I think those are some of the big things that come to my mind first.
Yeah, I think that was a great answer for a very general question. I kind of threw you a curveball a little bit there. with that.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that people need to be careful of, and tell me if I'm incorrect, is people think more weight equals more power, more speed. If I bench press 50 pounds or 100 pounds, whatever your maximum is, you know, I think that's a mistake, correct? More weight doesn't necessarily translate into more power or speed, does it?
Not necessarily, and that's where assessment becomes important and looking at the individual. Again, if someone is limited, so power is essentially how much force you can generate and how quickly you can generate it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what is limiting someone in their club head speed? If we think about that as what we're talking about power, what is limiting someone could be the strength component of that, and getting stronger may actually help that person. That's oftentimes what we see in our juniors, our ladies. They're more limited sometimes by the amount of force that they can generate in that equation. Sometimes it's more on the speed end of things and how fast they can generate it. So again, you think of I'm sure we've all played with a guy that looks like he ought to be able to hit it 100, ought to be able to hit it 300 yards and hits it about 200. Because, they have all the strength part of that equation, but they don't have the speed part of that equation. So that's where, again, the assessment part becomes important. And, I think just getting stronger is not always the answer. It's probably an answer to a certain degree. And then once you've kind of checked the strength box and you can generate enough strength, it's different than a sport like football, where more strength is probably going to continue to give you increased performance and increased gains, essentially. But in golf, it's not. And at some point, you got to focus on the speed end of that equation.
And so then how does flexibility contribute or detract from all of that too?
Well, I think it can detract if you can't control the ranges of motion that your body can get into. And again, this is sometimes what we see again in our juniors and sometimes our ladies. They have plenty of flexibility or plenty of mobility, but they don't have the ability, the strength, the stability to control those ranges of motion. So they're kind of moving. They're not able to control that and turn it around and generate enough club head speed. If there's limited mobility, then we're probably talking about the ability to rotate through the hips, rotate through the thoracic spine, or basically, get a good shoulder turn. And we're going to limit the amount of time that we have to create speed. So a lot of times, and Ben's done a lot of testing on, he talks about resistors and releasers. So a lot of times guys that don't have enough mobility or are trying to restrict their backswing for whatever reason, they don't have enough time to generate club head speed. So mobility can essentially give you more time to create more speed.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so that's a great segue into the next question is what can we do to increase our mobility? And I'm going to, kind of go into, I know for myself personally, in my thoracic region, I tend to be a little bit tight. So I struggle with, how far I can get back. So I gotta use more of my body to turn and, because I can't separate my shoulders from my hips that much as I've gotten older. So let's kind of be specific to the upper body for this. And what are some exercises, or maybe you could show us some things that we can do at home, since we all have all this time, to work on some good thoracic mobility. And I'm gonna agree with what you said. I find a lot of players struggle in their golf swing because they can't get back far enough. And when you can't get back far enough in your backswing, your body senses that, so you try to generate power from other places, and the number one place is people are going to go with their arms. So if you're somebody who finds they struggle with tempo or coming over the top a little bit, that lack of ability to turn back gives you not enough length to your swing. Therefore, you don't have any time to get the rest of your body involved. So you end up going over something like this, and that's a great cause for an over the top. It's also an issue with short game. If you struggle with your short game and you don't get it back far enough, you're going to do that. Not that has anything with mobility, but it's just one of those things. So Kirk, why don't you go into a couple of exercises that the viewers here can do at home to increase some upper body rotation or mobility?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think what I'll try to do, I'll try to show 4 that I think I can show easily, and that can be done basically with very minimal equipment, or probably what most people are going to have at home. But basically what we're trying to address is first
Perfect.
is thoracic extension. So, if we think about being able to kind of sit up, the old sit up tall, be in good posture. Okay. If we're not tall, if we're starting from a rounded position, it's going to be very hard to rotate well. So first thing we'll look at is how can we get someone essentially taller and more extended through that upper back, and then also work on now the ability to rotate through there. So I'll try to show you a couple here quick. One that I would what I would usually start with is have somebody just lie on their back, go with hands together up here, and then simply try to get their hands up over their head, thumbs to the floor, without allowing that low back to arch. So a lot of people are going to just start to go into low back extension. But if we can keep the hands together and go over the head and try to work to the floor there with straight elbows, that's going to work on, again, that ability to extend. Another one we can do is with something like a chair or a bench. We can just take a golf club, start here on our chair. I'm just going to kind of sit my hips back to my heels, curl this over my head, and basically just trying to take my chest as close as I can to the floor. And again, that's going to work on our ability to extend through that upper body. So those are 2 simple ones we can do there.
Yeah, that was, Kirk, just when you move just a little bit away from the camera, try to talk just a little bit louder, and I lose you on Instagram too when they do that. So I know we got a couple of mediums going here. I apologize to everybody. We're trying to go on Instagram and Facebook as we do this. So maybe demonstrate that last one with your hands over your shoulder, and just kind of, if you can do it up at the counter there so people can see it.
Yeah. So if you can imagine, I've got my elbows on kind of a bench or a table, and I've got a golf club in my hands. And what I'm going to do is kind of just sit my hips back towards my heels. I'm trying to take my chest down to the ground, and that's going to kind of open up and extend that upper body. And again, that's an easy one that most people should have, a golf club or a broomstick handle, something like that they can do at home.
Yeah, that's a great. Ben showed me that years ago when I got evaluated by Ben, and I do that before every time I play. It really opens up my mid back by holding my arms out there and doing that kind of pushing my head down through my elbows. Is a great exercise. So we got a question here from Paul. Paul asks, is there any benefit to swinging a weighted object in relation to to club head speed? So do you like heavy weighted objects? I'm actually going to start with that first. And I'm actually not a huge fan of weighted clubs to generate speed. I think it especially some of those really heavy ones. Now, there's a device called Super Speed Golf where they have a club that's slightly heavier than a regular club and then slightly lighter. And I think a little bit heavier or lighter or a little bit longer is okay. But when you get into some of these really heavy clubs and trying to swing, I actually think they could do more damage than good. I like weighted clubs for instructional purposes to do positions. So you see some of these clubs weigh anywhere from 5 to 8, 9 pounds. And to hold them and do a slow swing just so you can feel where your body is and to train your muscles where they're supposed to be there would be a better use of a weighted club in my opinion, but I'm not a huge fan of that. Kirk, what do you think about weighted clubs?
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's a couple things there. Again, it's weighted club is probably helpful to a point. This Super Speed did a lot of research on the particular weights that they have on their clubs. And so, there's weighted is good to a point, and you start to get some diminishing returns if it starts getting too heavy. If you basically think about trying to swing a sledgehammer, you take it to the extreme, that's going to be obviously way too heavy. So heavy to a degree is probably okay. Again, the intent there is going to be important. So if same thing with our medicine ball drills, like we need to find a medicine ball that the weight is appropriate for the intent that person is trying to do. If it's so heavy that they can't, move with intention to move quickly, then that is probably going to not have the same club head speed benefits that we're looking for. The other thing I would say there is if you do swing something a little bit heavier, I would probably follow it with something that's a little bit lighter. You know, all the super speed protocols finish with their lightest clubs. So there seems to be some benefit to kind of finishing, you know, working up to something a little bit heavier, but eventually finishing with something that's a little bit lighter. So, and I know Ben and I have talked about, you know, even whether, you know, again, when we try to individualize things as much as possible, some people might benefit more by swinging a heavy object, and some people might actually only benefit by swinging a lighter object. Without some assessment, we're not going to really know that. So I hope that helps answer that question.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think anybody who's listening, you know, before you start getting into some real heavy exercises and even trying these things, yeah, I definitely think you have to consult with a fitness professional first, so they know, you know, what your body can and can't do. I know you know, I assess all my students before they come. And Ben, I know and I'm sure you are too. You guys are fanatics about assessing, because it's really it's, you know, it doesn't do any good to get somebody injured. Right? That's not going to help. So until we know how your bodies, and until you know how your bodies are designed to move, I think you have to be really careful with any kind of exercise. Correct?
For sure. I mean, we get questions all the time about whether, you know, this exercise is good or bad. And it's, you know, the typical answer is, well, it depends. I need some more information. I probably need to put you through I probably need to assess a few things. It's going to depend a little bit on your exercise history. You know, what is appropriate for someone who's been exercising for 10 years is going to be different than someone who is coming into our gym for the first time. And, you know, the reality of it is you know, different exercises have a different level of complexity to them. So when we're talking about speed, a lot of our speed and power exercises where we're moving things fast, there's weighted implements involved. You know, those are on the higher end of the spectrum as far as potential challenges relative to injury and overuse. So those are the ones that we, you know, really need to be careful about, making sure that we feel comfortable giving them to begin with based on our assessment process, and then also giving them in the right dosage that we're not going too far and too fast.
Right. So now we're all at home, and so it's hard to get, you know, we're not allowed to go see you guys. You guys are shut down just as well as we are.
Yeah.
In person. So two questions. One, are there any assessments that we can do on ourselves to figure out what we can and can't be doing? And if not, is there a way where we could do, either I send you something, or do you send out like a list of procedures for assessment for people to video and then send them into you, or do you do them live? How do you assess people now in this atmosphere?
Yeah, I mean, well, we're getting much better at essentially training people through this type of a medium. So, you know, I could essentially probably put you through almost our entire initial assessment process right there in front of your couch. And we do have an online training option that we've had for a while now, where people can essentially shoot, you know, they go on our online platform, they see an example of what an assessment would look like. They take a video of themselves doing that assessment exercise, which then we can view. And then that'll help us, you know, get an idea of what would be appropriate from a programming perspective. You know, I think there's some things that people can do at home that I would typically look at, you know, simply just getting, you know, we look a lot at being able to separate the upper and the lower body in the swing. So if you think about simply getting in your golf posture and then trying to rotate your upper body without rotating your lower body, and then kind of vice versa. Can you kind of rotate your hips and lower body without your upper body moving? You know, just seeing if you have the ability to do that in that kind of controlled setting, especially the lower body disassociation or separation. A lot of times people find surprisingly challenging. But that can give you a pretty good insight into what you may need to find some help with. You know, something simple as
I'm going to interrupt for a second. Why don't you?
Yeah.
Why don't you get up and do that one? People can't hear you when you step back, so I'll kind of talk them through it. But get up and this is an exercise that I do with people. You may need to move your Instagram camera to take a little step to your left. So and this is something that I do with golfers. Yeah, right there you go. There you go. So if you could not move your lower body and turn your upper body, that would be great. A lot of times when I have people do this, your hips will start moving too. And so like that. So if Kirk or I have to grab your hips, then we know that you're able to separate, but you're not able to stabilize the two. So it's a stability issue, not a mobility issue. So now if Kirk tries to hold his upper body and not move his lower, or do the opposite, now he can move his lower, not his upper. And this is the one that people tend to struggle with. And I'll have students, you can actually put that counter or use a door frame to hold your shoulder from moving and then train your hips. And this is where you can learn, is it you're actually not able to move, so then we got to work on the ability, the mobility part, or can you move, but you have to have something stabilize you. And there's a big difference between those two, correct? Between stability and mobility.
Yeah, I mean, part of our assessment process is not only trying to find out what the player might be struggling with, but also hopefully give us the best idea of how to then actually help them and fix that. And like you said, sometimes the inability to move the way we'd like to, yes, it comes down to more of a mobility issue. And that's basically what we would think about as like a soft tissue or flexibility issue. Or it's more of a stability issue, meaning our ability to, if I can't literally hold my upper body in place while I'm trying to move my lower body, that may be what's actually keeping me from creating that good separation and not actually a limitation in my hips. So like you said, like you described very well, basically what we'll do is we'll try to provide some stability to that segment that's supposed to be not moving at the time. And then if the other segment starts moving better, that probably tells us that it's not truly a mobility issue. It's that they simply can't stabilize the other portion.
Right. Now, before I interrupted you, you were going to go into a deep squat that people can do at home. And what does a deep squat tell us?
Oh.
Or let me rephrase it. What does a deep squat tell you? I know what it.
Well, it can tell us a lot of things. It's kind of a tell-all, kind of assessment, or it can potentially point out a lot of things that we'll probably want to break down a little bit farther. Everything from, kind of ankle mobility to, good hip mobility, upper body thoracic extension, again, that ability to get our arms up over our head. So as I watch somebody do that, sometimes it's, well, they can keep the club above their head, but they can't get their hips low enough. And then sometimes it's vice versa. Their lower body squats very well, but we see that club kind of start to travel forward as they move into that squat. So then that might say, okay, now we want to break that out a little bit and maybe spend a little more time assessing one of those two halves. But that's kind of a big picture. Some of the assessments really focus in on one specific area, and then some of those kind of give us a big global picture of a lot of things that are happening together.
Yeah, I think, from the little testing that I do, I don't like to get into it too much. Like I said, I like to leave it to you guys, but I actually like to have them also lean up against the wall. So their back's against the wall, almost like they're doing a wall sit. Mm-hmm. And then hold their arms out, and let's see how far they can go before they either arch or they lose connection. And I find that most of us are, we're sitting just like this in front of a computer, you're hunched over, you're typing on like this, or, and I was guilty of this too. Most men want to have a big chest, big, strong arms. They do a lot of, front exercises, and golf is, it's a rear muscle sport, more of, the upper back and the, and those kind of muscles. And I think, would you agree that's a good exercise it's probably a good exercise to do every day, right? Just get your arms up, get some shoulder mobility. And then it's a good assessment to see how far you can go. So you can kind of test yourself. And that, I think it's important to measure what you're doing. So if you only can go to here, then that's where it is. And then hopefully the next week you can go to there. Do you like that, or would you agree?
No, I think that's a great one. And that's one that, I struggle with. And we see often people, especially again, a lot of our guys struggle with. Like you said, we live very much in this kind of rounded over our phones, over our computers type posture. A lot of guys especially have spent a lot of time working on, like you said, working on those muscles in the front of the body, those chest muscles. And then, so that's a great one to do at home, is like you said, just kind of go stand up against the wall, bend your knees a little bit, kind of like the one I demonstrated on the floor. That would be an exercise to work up to kind of the one up against the wall. But yeah, just can you get your arms over your head with elbows straight and your thumbs against the wall? And if not, then that's a pretty good indication that you've got some limitation in your ability to extend. It's probably affecting how you're turning in your swing. And some of the struggles you might be having are again, they're not based on you don't understand what you're trying to do. It's that your body isn't going to allow you to do it very well or very consistently.
But it's also probably something good to do while you're sitting at your desk, just to get some blood moving, just to get it going while you're in the office, right? Get those arms up and get moving. Hopefully, most of us in the privacy of our own homes now, so we can do that. But it's just good to do. And so let's take that let's relate it to golf now, golf swing. So if and again, let's stay focused on the upper body. If you don't have the mobility in your shoulders or your body, you can't rotate very well. I'm going to let you start with this, and then I'm going to chime in. What swing issues do you typically see with golfers? Like what would it be when you can't get your arms up or you can't externally rotate your shoulders or anything like that? What do you guys typically see as far as a swing issue there?
Well, I would think that could very often lead to, if needing to stand up in the backswing, kind of coming out of posture a little bit, probably leading to a club path that is going to be a lot more left, kind of across, coming over the top a little bit, making it hard to kind of come in from the inside a little bit. So I would think those would be some of the things that,
right.
Not being able to, if you can't get your arms over your head, you're going to stand up because you're going to have to get it there. And like you said, you're going to have to do it a different way. And if you can't keep your elbow or your arm in external rotation, that's gonna force that club path out and across the body there a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I find when I get, and I typically see it with the older people. I mean, I turned 50 this year, so now I'm considered one of the older ones. So I feel their pain. But if you don't have the mobility to get back, you're going to find a way to do it. So your body, you're either going to come up a little bit so you can get a little bit more stuff there, or you're going to just lift your arms up and not turn, right? If you just kind of do this to get it back, and we all know that's going to lead to definitely more of an outside in swing. And the hardest thing for me is when I get a student coming, well, how do I stop swinging out to in? I'm like, well, your body's not going to let you do it. So you either got to go see Kirk and work on it, or we have to make adjustments. And the adjustments that we make are usually with alignment. So if you can't get back far enough, I may close your stance a little bit where I pull your right foot back and your right side back a little bit. So you can, hold on, we got somebody chiming in here. So you can't, I lost sorry, someone hacked into our Zoom account there. That was a little odd. Never had that happen before. Let me kick this guy off here. Sorry, folks. That was interesting. Never had that happen before. So now I know what all the schools in New York City are complaining about when people hacking in. I had my first hacker.
Yeah, right.
So like I was saying, if you can't get your arms back far enough, you're going to come up out of your posture. You're going to lean back. You're going to do all these different things, and then it's going to lead to over the top. And then my fix is, okay, so let's close your stance up a little bit, close your shoulders up a little bit, maybe move the ball back a little, just to make it a little easier to swing less into out. Make some accommodations like that. And for me as a coach, it's always hard to look at my student in front of me and say, look, your body's limiting what you can do. So we have to find a way to go into it, because everyone's always like, well, I was a great athlete growing up and doing whatever. I'm like, that's probably true when you were 15, but now you're 55. You've been sitting in front of a desk for 30 years and your body doesn't quite move that way. So it's important to, get into some more fitness and to some other things. Another common swing mistake that I see with people, Kirk, is swaying. So their hips, that's when your hips are moving laterally too much. And what do you sense, or what are some common physical limitations that you come across with golfers when you see somebody sway?
I would say probably two things. One, a lot of people we see struggle in the ability. So again, we think about in the swing, we can kind of move sort of one of three ways. We can move up and down, we can move side to side, and we can move in rotation. And some combination of those is going to produce what we do from a swing perspective. The one that I would say people struggle with the most is the ability to rotate. We've already talked a lot about, kind of thoracic rotation. Hip rotation a lot of times for people is even worse, especially as they get older. So if we can't rotate well, like we would see probably on, some better players that are, maybe more physically gifted, or especially what we would see on the tour, we're going to have to produce movement in another way. And that's oftentimes going to come, by standing up more in the swing, or by sliding and swaying a little bit during the swing. So a lot of times if we have somebody who's sliding or swaying too much, they're probably going to be limited in their ability to rotate. They're probably also going to be limited in their ability to, in their lateral stability. Okay. So one of the things when we talk about golf fitness, I think one of the things that sort of separates it from typical fitness or general fitness is, a lot of traditional fitness is very forwards and backwards. We think of running and squatting and doing push-ups and things like that. And that's all very kind of forwards and backwards. And, a lot of people, even when they do a lot of working out, they spend a lot of time kind of moving in that forward and backward type motion. So they haven't created good stability side to side. So sometimes they get moving towards the ball and they just can't put the brakes on.
Right.
You just something as simple as, a lot of people love to do planks and people love to do core exercises, but they don't do nearly as many side planks and different variations that way. So we get very good at putting the brakes on moving forward, but we're not as good putting the brakes on side to side. So we kind of start that horizontal force and we can't put the brakes on, and we end up sliding too much.
Yeah. And from a teaching perspective, when I get somebody who's sliding too much, the first thing I'm going to look at is your stance width. The wider your stance gets, the harder it is for your body to turn. So if you want to turn a little bit better, go ahead and start to narrow your feet up a little bit. Something else you can do is you can position your feet to where your toes point outward just a little. And you could just go, if you're just having trouble turning to the right, you can just turn your right foot out a little bit, and that'll give you an accommodation to turn your hips just a little bit more in the backswing. So those are some things to kind of do. And then if we're really struggling, again, I may even just drop the right side back, or even drop the left side back, or use any combination of those three just to help the body move, to turn a little bit better. Because I think one of the, being not able to turn in the golf swing causes more problems than not being able to shift. If you're somebody who has a chicken wing in your golf swing, or your arms get really short in your swing, it's more because your body isn't rotating than it isn't shifting. So I find, increasing some rotation in your body is really important, which is why I brought up that question. Kirk, we got two questions here on Instagram that I want to get to. The Bogey Small said, what's the best advice for a bigger golfer with a swing that produces a natural pull hook? Oh, that sounds like a question for me. So, the Bogey Small. So the best advice is if you consistently hit a natural pull hook, just play it. Just change the way you aim. If I go and change your swing and now the ball's going in all different directions, I think it's going to be harder for you to play. So I would do that. Something you can do minor is check your ball position. Typically a ball position that gets too far to the left or too far forward in your stance tends to produce that kind of a shot, kind of a pull hook. So check, if you play the ball back a little bit, your swing direction tends to go a little less to the left, or you can swing out to the right a little bit more. And that pull hook can now become kind of more of a push draw. But a short, quick answer is just if you're going to pull hook it, aim towards the right side, and if you're a righty, assuming, and go ahead and pull hook it into play. Hopefully that helps it, and you can kind of combine that with your ball position, like I said. Got another question. Hopefully that answered your question from Lucky Daddy 7250. This is a question for you, Kirk. It says, "Hey guys, can you suggest stretching exercise for tight hip flexors from sitting at work?" Right?
Yeah.
The new the tight hip flexors.
Yeah, simple one is, I'll try to show it here again quickly, is just to kind of go into a half kneeling position where we've got one foot in front of the other. I'll show this side. So I got my left knee on the floor.
Try to move, go a little bit closer to your caddy. Try to move. Yeah, they can't see it. There you go. Yeah, there you go. Right, that's good.
Okay. So I got my left leg on the ground. I got my right foot forward, and that's just going to get a big stretch here on the front of my left hip. If I have something, again, like a chair or a desk that I can put this back foot up on, that's going to increase that stretch even more. But basically, we're just taking that hip. So I'm down on one knee, trying to get that flexion through that hip there. But that's a real simple one you can do. Basically, when you're in a sitting position, you've got that hip inflection for a long period of time. And now we're just trying to get it into some extension. So that I do that one all day long.
Yeah. So it's doing like a front lunge almost. Let me see if I can demonstrate it here on my sofa. If I get down here like this and kind of get sitting with I got one leg down, one leg up, and just kind of keep my chest up and lean forward. Is that kind of what we're talking about? Something like that.
Yeah. So like if
stretches out this part right here.
Yep. Yeah. So if you're doing like a lunge exercise, you're going to get a bit of that hip extension stretch on the trail leg. The front hip's going to be in flexion. That back hip's going to be an extension. But yeah, that's a simple one, or people call it a couch stretch, where you've got one foot up on the couch behind you. You've got the other leg on the floor in front of you, and you're just kind of getting a big stretch there. So, if you kind of dropped one knee on the ground there, Kevin, where you're at with your foot on your couch behind you, that would be an easy way to do that.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think, something else is just stand up, right? Just stop sitting down. It's pretty easy.
Well, that's the biggest thing, like you mentioned with mobility and that kind of stuff is, the reason we typically lose that kind of stuff is we just, we end up staying in similar postures for great periods of time, whether it be the sitting posture or a standing posture. And our body just gets very used to being in that posture and not in other ones. So, like you said, losing the ability to put our arms over our head and rotate our body is because we just don't do those kind of things. So, just sitting at work and rotating your upper body a little bit and moving your hands up and down over your head, eventually you're going to get a little better at doing that. It doesn't need to be a complicated exercise program. Just add a little bit of movement into your day. That'll help.
Yeah, I think that's great. Got a question here from Matthew on Facebook. It says, is there a disadvantage to doing speed work if swing mechanics aren't quite dialed in yet? I'll start with that, and I'm going to say no. I don't think that there's a disadvantage of doing some speed work, and I actually think doing speed work will most likely improve your mechanics. Because in order to get some speed, your body has to move efficiently. And I find people's mechanics get off because of the club face and the desire to make the ball go to a certain place. And then we do whatever we can do to make it do that. If we chop the club head off of a club and you just have like a super speed stick, something that had a little bit of weight to it, and you just swung it, I'm fairly certain that the path that you swing that club around your body is going to be ideal. And when you start adding some speed to this, your body's going to find a way to stabilize. And actually, I talked about this the other day with the Golficity guys. If you got up and did some short, quick swings back and forth like this, you're going to stop swaying, you're going to start turning, you're going to start generating some speed, and your body's going to learn to stabilize it. And then as you get comfortable with it, then you start to go a little bit faster and a little bit faster. So, Matt, that's my point. That's what I think. Kirk, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a time that, in your training, in your golf fitness program, where you can be focusing on generating more club head speed. And then there's a time where you can be focusing on your technique and producing club alignments and things like that. And that could be two separate things that you're working on. And then you try to take both of those things to the course and play better golf. So I don't think there's anything wrong with, working on speed, even if you're, nobody's not working on their mechanics. So, there's always a time to work on speed. And I think, and I always try to use the analogy of when we're doing, speed training, all we're trying to do is build a bigger engine. And when you're on the course, you can decide how fast you rev that engine. But if you've got a bigger engine, you've got more options. And then, it's my job to mostly build the engine. And then it's Kevin's job to teach you how to steer the car. But you can be working on both of those things at the same time. And I agree with him where, like he said, sometimes by working on speed or just trying to hit the ball far and not worrying about where it goes, your mechanics might actually improve. And I see that a lot in some of the exercises that we do in the gym when we're doing things like I said, like jumping exercises or med ball throw exercises. People are thinking so much about how to jump that they don't actually jump. And so sometimes I tell them to, I give as minimal instruction as possible. And I just try to tell them, look, if all you want to do is get from point A to point B as fast or as far as possible, what would you naturally do? And that's usually the most efficient way to do it. It's in there a lot of times. We've kind of forgotten how to do it.
So let's talk a little bit about balance in the golf swing. We all know balance is important. And I was actually, this was a little while back, I was training for some speed, and I would get onto a Bosu ball and do some exercises on a Bosu ball because the Bosu was a little unstable, and I tried to stabilize it. And Ben basically looked at me and said, "Why? What are you doing?" You know how Ben can get. It's like, if it doesn't make sense for you. And so I'm like, well, it was an unstable, so I'm training myself to be unstable and to stabilize. And he's like, well, you're not that good with both feet on the ground anyway. So what are some exercises or what are some pitfalls with working on balance on a unstable thing, on something, aside from the obvious of hurting yourself, but why would somebody work on balance on something that's not stable versus stable? And then kind of go through that for me.
Yeah. I would say that very similar to what you said. The reason I probably wouldn't put most people on an unstable surface, especially initially, is like you said, I could probably challenge their stability enough on a stable surface that I probably don't need to put them on an unstable surface. Plus, we play the game on a relatively stable surface, so we want to, that's the environment we want to sort of train in. Is, we're going to have our feet on the ground. The way our feet are going to interact with the ground is going to be much different on a Bosu ball or a balance disc than it would be on the actual ground. We know footwear can affect a great deal about how we balance and how we use the ground. And the same, that can change how we swing. That can produce, poor swing mechanics that we would rather not have. Same thing with training on an unstable surface like a Bosu ball or a balance disc, something like that. That's not how we're going to be swinging the club. And I can probably work on your balance with enough instability having you on a stable surface, unless you get to a level that I absolutely that's the next progression I can take you.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously there's the injury factor. Because you never want somebody to work on balance and then twist and break an ankle and then you're done.
No, definitely don't want that.
I'll never forget back in the early 2000s when I think it was 2005 or something. I was working a little bit with Brad Faxon and it was Thanksgiving time, and I got the call, and he's like, "Sprack, got a little bit, happy Thanksgiving, whatever. Got a little bit of news. It was doing a jumping exercise, landed on a ball. That's when he blew out his ACL. His knee. You never like to get that call from anybody.
No.
So you always have to be careful working out, right?
Oh, for sure. You see a lot. You see a lot of interesting stuff on social media and even ESPN and things like that, because that's the kind of stuff that looks cool. And that's, I think, what most people assume high-level athletes are doing. And some of them are, but they're also high-level athletes and they can get away with it. Whereas most people would be better off doing something that's a little simpler, a little more just, it's like working on your golf game. I mean, there's basics that everybody should probably work on and be really good at before they try to do super high level things. And that's the same thing that goes in fitness. Most people would be better off spending a lot more time focusing on the basics and getting really good at those things. Show me you can do a good squat. Show me you can do a good plank. Show me you can do a good push-up. And then you can, then maybe you can start jumping around on balance discs.
Yeah, that's like when I get somebody come in, "Hey, I was watching swings of Rory. I want to swing like Rory." I'm like, "Yeah, you're not 25 and a super athlete like Rory. So let's swing like you. Let's swing like you and not like Rory." Got a question here on Instagram from Bryce Fenton. Great question. Is strength or flexibility more important when it comes to generating speed? That's a great question, and that'll be one we'll finish off with here. So, Kirk, I'm going to let you take that.
Okay. Yeah, like you said, great question. I think it's one of those things. Again, I need to know more of who I'm dealing with, and deciding both are important to generating speed. When it comes to, I'll just simply try to generalize it into males and females, and this is very generalized, but most males probably need more flexibility to generate more speed. Most of our women probably could get stronger to generate more speed. And that's very generalized, but that's a way that I would want to assess that with someone. Again, are they strong? If they're strong enough, and we could run them through some strength tests to sort of decide if they meet some basic levels of strength, and we see that they're good there, but they're failing all of our flexibility and mobility tests, then it's probably more of a flexibility issue, and vice versa. If they can move great, they've got a lot of flexibility, but they have very limited strength, then it's probably, strength is going to be more of a contributing factor there, but both are very important.
Yeah, and I think you can relate it to, just take a teenager. Most teenagers are fairly flexible, although nowadays I've seen some kids that can't touch their toes, but yeah. In general, most teenagers are like Gumby. They could turn for days, but they don't have the stability to transfer the power through their body. And then as we get older now, like in my age, I've gotten less flexible. I have the strength now, but I don't have the flexibility. So for me, flexibility starts to play a role. But it's like, it's a balance. It's like green reading. Is it what's more important, speed or direction? Well, they're both important, right? It's just which one's important for that particular player. So one of the things I like about what Kirk does and what Ben does over at the Ben Shear Golf is they deal with the player that's standing in front of them. There's lots of information out there about fitness, obviously about golf, and most of it's really, really good, but most of it's probably not really, really good for you. So, part of what we have to kind of go through is filter through some things, figure out what's good for you. So, Kirk, how do people get in touch with you if they want to get assessed or they have more questions about fitness or anything?
Yeah, I mean, anybody's welcome to reach out to me on Instagram. I'm at Kirk Adams Golf, Instagram, Twitter, Kirk Adams Golf, and then on Facebook, I'm at Kirk Adams. And then the Ben Shear website, which is bensheargolf.com. Would love to hear from anybody have any other questions. Happy to answer those. And we're doing some, like a lot of people, we're doing some virtual training options right now. We've got an adult and a junior group that we run during the week. And then we're also doing private lessons or private workouts with our clients and with other members through Zoom, just like this in their homes.
Yeah, I think, if everyone's probably got more time than they know what to do with, and it's really not that expensive. I know you guys typically on one-on-one tend to be a little bit more expensive, but now in this atmosphere, it's a great opportunity to take advantage of being able to see guys like Kirk, because during the golf season, Kirk's going 10, 12 hours a day. He's tough to get in. Ben's nearly impossible. So if you can take advantage of their expertise right now, and you guys also, you have some stuff on your website or some YouTube stuff that some exercises that people can see out there. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we've been posting example exercises on Instagram and Facebook and things like that for a while now. So there's, we have things that we try to push out there on a regular basis. And yeah, I mean, and I've got a bunch of stuff on my personal page as well, and then also through the Ben Shear Golf account. But lots of ideas out there. A lot of when it comes to fitness, with some basic information, I can probably tell you about 80% of what you're going to need. And then that last 20% is where we really kind of try to dive in, put someone through an assessment, and then figure out what's really going to make the difference for them versus somebody else we might be working with.
Perfect. Well, Kirk, thank you for hanging out with us for the evening. I learned a lot in this time. For everybody out there, thank you for joining us. This will be available on our Facebook page for replay. You can go to my YouTube channel, which please do go to YouTube channel, subscribe. Got some other great videos out there. Tomorrow night, I've got two great guys, Jeff Fisher from the Fisher Bryan Golf School out in Arizona, and Chris Smeal, who runs the Future Champions Tour out in California. And we're going to talk more about junior golf and stuff, how to get into college. Kirk works, you guys work with a ton of junior players. So Kirk's one of my great resources on fitness for juniors. And hopefully we'll see you tomorrow night. Kirk, thanks again. Have a great night. Enjoy your week.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Yep. And I'll be speaking with you soon.
Sounds good. Take care.
Yep.